Coming up on today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast, hear what head coach Josh McDaniels had to say as he opened up training camp for 2023 for the Silver and Black, plus a couple roster moves that the Raiders made, and your calls and texts. That plus a whole lot more is coming up on Wednesday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for July 26, 2023.
Just win. Just win. Just win. Just win.
The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won, and won, and won, and won, and won.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. Make sure you subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast to get the latest edition of the show. Of course, if you're checking us out on YouTube, man, we appreciate you. We really do. Whether you give us 3 minutes or 33 minutes, we definitely appreciate you taking a few minutes of your time each and every day to go ahead and check out the Locked On Raiders podcast. And again, if you're checking us out on YouTube, many thanks to my man Ari. He does a great job each and every day making sure we're up on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're available there. You can check him out on Twitter if you want, or maybe it's called X, in your world. Now that's the new name for Twitter. I will never get used to that, but it's at Ari Produces. That's how you find him. How you find me, at your boy Q254. And how do you get a hold of the show? You can call the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. You'll have your calls and texts coming up in segment number 3 of today's show. Segment number 2, I was a part of Up and Adams show, K Adams show on FanDuel TV on Tuesday. It's something I talked about on Tuesday's podcast about 8 o'clock in the morning before I headed over to Raiders HQ for Josh McDaniels' press conference, talking all things silver and black. And K Adams is fantastic. Used to be part of NFL Network, used to be on Good Morning Football with Nate Burleson. She did a great job. She's transitioned now to FanDuel TV. She's got her show Up and Adams. Last time I saw her was at the Super Bowl in Arizona. Fantastic. She was part of my show. I'm part of her show. Anytime she sends the invite to me, I'm definitely going to do it. So just a pleasure to be on her show. You'll actually hear our conversation coming up in segment number 2. And it's funny, there's only about 5 minutes of myself and her going back and forth, but she actually had a little bit of a bone to pick with some folks when it came to the chances of the Raiders making the playoffs. She felt the Raiders were being disrespected. So you'll hear that part as well coming up in segment number 2 of today's show, my conversation with Kay Adams on Up and Adams, plus her just talking about the Raiders and the fact that she feels like Jimmy G and company are being disrespected. Here in segment number 1, I like to hit you with the news and notes of the day. And before I do that, I do want to remind you that today's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. A championship team is about each player being a perfect fit. That's the same with your vehicle. So for parts that fit, head to eBay Motors and look for the green check. Stay in the game with eBay Guaranteed Fit. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. Not talking about Russell Wilson ever. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. So let's go ahead and jump into the news and notes here in segment number 1. I want you to hear a few sound bites from head coach Josh McDaniels. He met with us on Tuesday morning about 9:30, 9:45 Pacific time, and there was a lot of people there in the media room. It was the first day of school, right? Everyone's in class on the first day of school. By mid-semester, the class is half empty. That's what I'm expecting it to be. That's basically what it is each and every year. But it's a new year, new media members. Everyone's in the room to hear what the coach has to say. So a lot that he had to say on Tuesday. I'm only going to bring you a couple sound bites because, well, if you want to hear some more, you can go to Raiders.com, check it out on their YouTube page. Like I said, about 23, 24 minutes long, all things Josh McDaniels talking about the Raiders. But I got about 3 sound bites I want to bring to the table here. And the first one is a question that I asked Coach about Marcus Peters and the addition to him. They just signed him on Monday. So how does he look at Marcus, and what does he feel like he brings to the table for that defensive room?
Yeah, it's an exciting opportunity, and Marcus has been a very decorated player for the entirety of his career for the teams that he's played for, and he's always been a guy that, I've coached against him a number of times, and when you're playing against him, you always know where he's at because there's a chance you might not want to throw at him, And again, players earn that opportunity and earn that status, not coaches or anybody else. And he's a very intelligent football player. He had multiple opportunities to sit down and talk with him. Very bright, understands the game, really a mature, intelligent guy in terms of defensive structure, coverages, reading route patterns, etc. Very impressed with that. And he wants to be a Raider. and so it was exciting for us to be able to make that happen, and excited to put him in with our group, and I know he's eager to get to work.
There you go. Marcus Peters is the subject right there. Josh McDaniels talking about what he brings to the room. And, again, he's a guy, as you heard him say on Monday when he signed his contract, just win, baby. Didn't have a whole lot to say. Said that the standard is set. The standard is going to change. He's a guy that I feel like can do it. Him, Max Crosby, obviously Devontae Adams, Josh Jacobs, those guys are standard changers. Those are the kind of guys that can stand up in a room and say, hey, this is not going to fly anymore. And even though Marcus Peters is only, a couple days on the roster, he's the kind of guy that has just enough stones to be able to say it anyway and go out there and do it. Right? He has just enough don't give a you-know-what to go out there and get it done and say, it don't matter how long I've been on the roster, this is not gonna stand anymore. This has got to be better. Max Crosby, obviously he's that dude as well who's talked about bringing in dogs. Marcus Peters is an absolute dog. So, you can hear Josh McDaniels enjoying and excited about what Marcus Peters will bring to that defensive side of the table and the defensive side of the ball. Well, how about competition in camp? Competition is better for everybody, right? The Raiders, in my opinion, really do have some real deal competition that we'll see in training camp starting today. Whether it's the cornerback room, whether it's the safeties, whether it's the linebackers, offensive line, there's legitimately some spots up for grab as far as I'm concerned. And Marcus Peters, in my opinion, who we just talked about, has one spot already locked down, that outside corner, as long as he goes into camp and does what he's supposed to do. And I would expect nothing less from Marcus Peters. So here's Josh McDaniels talking about what the competition in camp will do for the whole team.
I think it makes us all better. I mean, when you know that there's guys in your room that are trying to earn playing time that would otherwise go to you, it just makes you work that much harder, makes you study and prepare hard. And so I think we've always tried to do that as much as we could, and at every position. Some positions, as you guys know, changed a little bit more than others this spring and this offseason. But I think we've tried to build competition at every spot we could. And then now is the time for them to go out there and get opportunities and determine what their role is going to be, and we've always told them that their role will be what they make it, and that means that they get opportunities. And what they do with it's important.
Competition is fantastic. I definitely think that that's something that the Raiders need. When you don't have any competition behind you, you get lackadaisical. You get lazy. You feel like you're in cruise control. You feel protected and that you don't really have to work as hard as the next man because, your spot is already guaranteed. So when you have competition, you have someone breathing down your neck, especially a young dude who ain't making as much money as you, you definitely got to make sure you hold that young cat off. Those hungry cats are the ones that are always going to push somebody for their spot. So I think competition is great. So the final soundbite is a question that I asked head coach Josh McDaniels, and I kind of play it off the competition theme right there, and you'll hear the question that I asked, but it's about the defensive goals. Something I've talked about quite a bit on the show. I'm saying 40 sacks, 20 interceptions. That should be the standard. You want to talk about changing the standard? That should be the standard. That should be what Patrick Graham says, hey, this is what you guys are going to do this year. Who's going to go lead the charge and go get it, right? And look, if you fall a little bit short, fine. But at least you aimed for something really high. They had 6 interceptions last year. That's not going to cut it. It's got to be at least double digits. But why not aim for high double digits? Go for 20. Go for 40. 40 sacks, 20 interceptions. If you get anywhere close to that, you had a really good season. So here's my question and Josh McDaniels' answers about defensive goals. Talking about competition, does that go the same for like defensive goals, like sacks, pressures, turnovers? And obviously not asking for a number, but is there a certain kind of target that you guys have to get these guys fired up and have something to aim for?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about it very early in the offseason about, either touching the ball or getting the quarterback, and I think any good defense does those things, and so our goal each week will obviously be to try to create, disruption, turnovers, negative plays. Some weeks are harder to do that than others based on who we're playing and the type of the way they play. So, but I know our defense, our staff has really tried to identify some ways for us to improve. Dave and his personnel staff have done a good job of giving us some different types of players with different skill sets here to try to go out there and utilize those. So every team goes through changes. We've had changes on defense, and obviously we're going to try to address some of the things that maybe we weren't as good at last year. Different year, different team, different training camp. So I think we got a lot of work ahead of us in order to become, whatever it is ultimately we're going to become. But those certainly are things that you want to be good at on defense.
So there he was talking about the defensive goals and how they're set without obviously giving me a number, but clearly that they have something in mind, and something that they've been talking a lot about is affecting the ball, going out and getting your hands on the ball, going out and making plays, whether that's getting to the quarterback or, again, taking the ball away, getting it back to the offense. So I want to see how that changes, if it changes in 2023. If it does, if they have a more productive season affecting the quarterback and affecting the ball and creating turnovers, they have an opportunity to have a nice defense and complement an offense that I believe, as long as Jimmy G is there and healthy, can be really good. Quickly, as we close out segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day, I want to let you know about a couple roster moves that the Raiders made official on Tuesday, and that's re-signing free agent defensive tackle Kyle Peko. He rejoins the Silver and Black after appearing in 8 games and having 11 tackles and 1 pass defense for the Raiders back in 2022. So he re-signs with the team. He's back. I don't know if he's going to be a camp body. Of course, Byron Young, the 3rd-round pick out of Alabama, the defensive tackle, he's on the PUP list. Who knows how long he's going to be out, but as you've seen the last couple days, a few signings on the defensive line. Peko today, and Rochelle, the Isaac Rochelle, he was yesterday. So it's just, you're seeing that these changes are happening, and you see these additions are happening. So what does that mean? Is it just camp bodies? Is it guys that are competing for jobs? Or is it guys that, could be there long term because maybe a guy like Byron Young is going to be out for a while? Obviously, we don't know just yet. But corresponding moves, the Raiders waived cornerback Chase Garbers. And at one point, Chase Garbers was the only quarterback on the roster, right? And so now he's been waived. Now, that doesn't mean that they can't bring him back in some capacity at some point, but right now he has been waived. And then cornerback Isaiah Brown also been waived. So whenever there's some additions made to the roster, there's always got to be a corresponding move. So those are 2 of the corresponding moves that have been made so far. Quarterback Chase Garbers is gone, and cornerback Isaiah Brown. Also, Vinny Bonsignor passed along an injury update. He said the Raiders got good news today on offensive tackle Justin Herron. He passed his physical and has been cleared to begin training camp. He suffered a season-ending knee injury soon after the Raiders traded for him last year, played in 1 game before the injury. So clearly that's good news to get him back, and that provides more competition along that offensive line. And Herron is a guy that the Raiders really liked, and unfortunately he went down with that knee injury that ended his season soon right after they made that trade for him in 2022. So that's all I got for you for segment number 1 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast, news and notes of the day. Coming up in segment number 2, you'll hear the conversation that I had with Kay Adams from the Up and Adams show on FanDuel TV, something that I talked about on the podcast on Tuesday. I got a chance to catch up with her around 8 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday. So you'll hear that conversation coming up in segment number 2 after I tell you about the title sponsor of this show, which is BetterHelp. And I'll tell you right now, if sometimes you have uncertainty, or sometimes if you have life-changing decisions and you're not sure what direction to go in, that can bother you. That can keep you up at night. That can, make you not hungry and make you lose your appetite, right? Because you're just nervous and you're wondering what in the world you're going to do. You got to make the right decision. Sometimes these life-changing decisions are very, very tough, and the path forward is not always very clear. So whether you're dealing with a decision around a career, a relationship, or anything else, therapy can help you stay connected to what you really want while you navigate life, so you can move forward with confidence and excitement. Trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values is like anything. The more you practice it, the easier it gets. And I'll tell you right now, you never know when that life-changing moment's going to happen. You never know when you're going to have to make a decision that you were not prepared to, and sometimes you just need someone to listen to and help you, talk it out to decide what you're going to do. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Again, BetterHelp.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Time to jump into the conversation I had with Kay Adams from the Up and Adams show on Tuesday on FanDuel TV. Love to catch up with her. She's great. She's got a great football mind. Always appreciated what she had to say on Good Morning Football on NFL Network with Nate Burleson. I thought they were a really good team. He's gone his way. She's gone her way. Now she's got her show, Up and Adams. And on Tuesday, I had an opportunity to be a part of her show. But she starts off talking about the Raiders and their odds to make the playoffs and how she feels They're being disrespected. Check it out.
Okay, so Saquon, he's on his way to that tough day, hopefully happy and settled, at least less distracted and certainly incentivized. And then Josh Jacobs might be going in the other direction, literally. Tom Pelissero reporting just yesterday, Jacobs was spotted on a flight out of Vegas. No, leaving Las Vegas. And he's been telling some people close to him that he doesn't plan on returning anytime soon. Now, I would usually say that's a smart decision when leaving Vegas and having to do that awful walk through McCarran Airport where you're like dreading your loss of integrity somewhere by the pool somewhere at some beach club. This is not what I want. I want him to be there. And Josh, we should note, is not going to be fined because he hasn't signed his franchise tag yet. So he isn't technically under contract. So let's be real. There's not really much of an incentive for him to show up on time. And maybe he can work some, squeeze something out of it, Saquon-esque 1-year magic with some incentives. But he also cannot negotiate or renegotiate anything long-term until after the season either. So I can't see him passing up on $10 million. That in the worst case scenario, he will hopefully show up. I don't know that anybody has the, like what Dan was saying, like, does he have the stomach for it? You're losing money. You want to be out there. What are you doing for your future? Whose playbook are you following that says that holding out is a good idea? What's the injury risk when you show up with that? All of that needs to be considered. So I'd be shocked if this actually bleeds into this season. I think we see Jacobs show up when he has to, and we see him sort of continue to run through defenses like this and try to set himself up for a better 2024. And I have to say this, assuming the Raiders have Jacobs, Devontae Adams, and a healthy Jimmy G in the fold, I think they're getting a little disrespected right now. That's right, Raiders fans. You might be a little bit, what's going on? We don't want Jimmy G. Josh Jacobs isn't showing up. But if I'm a Raiders fan, get pissed off. Look at these odds at FanDuel Sportsbook. The Raiders are the third biggest long shot to make the playoffs in the entire league. What? I'm taking this. Are you kidding me? Sure. There's questions about Jimmy's ability to stay healthy all year long, his deep ball, blah, blah, blah. Let's not forget about the 44-19 record he put together as a starter, people. I'm not saying he's going to outduel Patrick Mahomes, single-handedly, but he could be a stabilizing force this offense needs after that disappointing 2022. So really, I think the biggest question people are doubting this team on is Josh McDaniels, not Josh Jacobs, not Jimmy G, the J that wears the visor hat that it didn't work out with in a lot of other teams. And he did his thing in New England. Does he have it? The track record goes back to Denver, so it's fair to question. But now Josh has his quarterback, the guy he wanted and brought into the fold. I don't know if it's because I was in Italy. Do I always talk with my hands like this? I'm so sorry. This roster is loaded with talent, guys. So I'm not ready to give up on the Raiders. And if I'm the Raiders, get mad at the disrespect the odds makers and pundits are whopping on you. Is Sean Payne going to be that good? Is really? Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it with somebody who loves the Raiders even more than I do, from LV Sports Network, the host of Raider Nation Radio. Oh, please welcome back my boy, your boy, Q.
Hey, what's happening? How you doing, Kay? Appreciate you having me on the show.
Great. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you since Super Bowl. What do you think of those odds?
Well, it seems like every single year the Raiders have bad odds. And every single year, except for last year, they actually, beat their odds, as far as total wins. The plus 390, of course, it's a very long shot for them to make the playoffs according to those odds. But if everything comes together, and I think that's why those odds are the way they are, because there's so many questions. You rolled them out pretty great there, as far as the injury history of Jimmy G. Can Josh McDaniels be a really good head coach as opposed to a really good offensive coordinator? So, there's questions. Of course, the defense, is it going to come together? But if everything comes together, the team could be really good, and especially that offense. I think the offense could be very dynamic and strong with Jimmy G knowing Josh McDaniels and having his guys in place. But again, it's always going to be about Jimmy G and making sure he's under center, which he is right now. And, training camp gets started tomorrow, so that's a good thing.
It's right. And Josh Jacobs will not be there. That's a bad thing, something that we want to rectify, but he's doing his thing. We respect it. What are the chances he takes this holdout into the season?
I don't think he's going to do that, and this is just my gut feeling. I think that $10 million is too much to pass on. We've seen how it's worked out for other running backs who haven't shown up, like a Le'Veon Bell type situation, and it just doesn't make any sense for Josh. And you saw what happened with Saquon Barkley this morning. I believe that's what's going to happen with Josh Jacobs, and again, this is just my gut feeling, but I think that's what the Raiders will do. They know how valuable he is. That guy had 393 touches last season. He was the engine that made the Raiders go, so he's so valuable to the team. team. He's not just a running back. He's the running back. He's Josh Jacobs. He led the league in rushing. He's just that guy. He's an alpha dog, and as Max Crosby has said, they need more dogs on the team. Devontae Adams has been on a tour talking about they need to go in the foxhole with him. That's the guy that he wants to ride with. So I think they'll get done sooner rather than later, but it's just a situation with the running backs. You know how it is these days. But what Saquon Barkley did this morning, I think is what similar is going to happen with Josh Jacobs.
I hope so. I hope he gets something back and maybe incentivizes him and gets him where he needs to be for this year. They certainly don't have the leverage on their side of the running backs at this point in time, at least. I showed you the odds. I want to talk about Josh McDaniels because I have a feeling that's why they're so stacked against the Las Vegas Raiders and their success for this season. What went wrong, the most wrong last year? I don't have time for everything that went wrong, but what went the most wrong, and why should I expect things to be better now outside, or maybe it is just that he has his guy now?
Well, what went most wrong was they lost close games. And in 2021, when they made the playoffs, they went on that 4-game winning streak. They won all those one-score games, all those down-to-the-wire games, and a lot of people said that's not sustainable. Well, in 2022, it wasn't. You know, they blew some double-digit leads, you know, and that's something that can't happen as well. And so a lot of that, they want to point and say that was on the quarterback. I think that was a collective. I think that was on Josh McDaniels. I think that was on the defense. I think that was on the quarterback. That was a team effort when they lost double-digit leads, and then they lost the close games. So that's one of the biggest keys is they've got to be able to find a way to win those close games. They've got to be able to sustain double-digit leads. And, you know, they make the move for Marcus Peters. Maybe he's a guy that can help that defense close out games. You know, one of the biggest games I go back to is that Thursday night against the Rams. You know, Baker Mayfield had been on the Rams about 12 minutes, and he goes out there and he goes on a drive to end the game to win the game. Those can't happen, right? So those are the kind of games that the Raiders lost that are heartbreaking for the fan base because they're looking at, like, what in the world is going on? How did that happen? They lost a 20-point lead at halftime against the Cardinals in week 2 at home, right? They were up 20-0 and they lose that game. Like, that can't happen. They let Kyler Murray run around the field. So, you know, the double-digit leads they lost, the close games they found ways to lose. Josh McDaniels, Patrick Graham, the defensive coordinator, they have to find ways to come together and make sure they can pull those off. If they can, they'll win more games than they did in 2022 where they went 6-11.
I hope Jimmy G has a lot to do with that because you can say what you want about him, but he is a winner. I don't know about the closing out games, but he sure does win a lot of them when he's out there and he's healthy. And players have always talked about their confidence in him because of that. He's a player's quarterback. Guys like to be around him. So hopefully that all shakes out really well. We can hear you on Raider Nation Radio and with the LB Sports Network. Honestly, I always learn. I don't even know. I forgot about that week 2 Cardinal game. In Vegas is in the back of my mind, a nightmare situation for Raiders fans watching, but hopefully there's some positivity to look ahead to this season. We appreciate you, Q.
So there was my conversation with Kay Adams from the Up and Adams show on FanDuel TV on Tuesday. Hopefully you enjoyed that. I know I did. It's always great when someone reaches out and wants me to be a part of their show to talk all things silver and black and just kind of let you know how far this show's gone, how far, you know, even my career's gone. And it's not about me, but it's always pretty cool when someone reaches out and is like, hey, could you be a part of the show? We need you to talk all things silver and black. So that was my conversation with Kay Adams on Tuesday on FanDuel TV on the Up and Adams show. Coming up in segment number 3, your calls and texts. Draft that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. That's next here on the Locked On Raiders podcast. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a call from King Raider from Compton, California. He's calling to talk about Jimmy G passing his physical and what that means for the Raiders offense moving forward, and also talks about the Marcus Peters signing. Here he is, King Raider from Compton, Cali.
Hey, what's up, Q? It's your boy King Raider from out here in Compton, California. Quick call. I just want to say I'm glad Jimmy G passed his physical. Because now we got to worry about who's going to be the QB. I was never happy about him being the QB, but hey, it is what it is now. So I'm glad he passed his physical because now he could train with us and could play. Hopefully play. That being said, our O-line started looking better and better last season as the season went on. So, you know, as long as we keep him upright, he should be good. If we get Josh Jacobs paid, we should be good. Because then he got to throw the ball that much. He'll hand it off. Josh Jacobs will do the hard running. And he can do short passes like he's known for. Then we got the yards for the yak, DA, and Renfro. So that's not really an issue. As long as everything goes right, and I know that's always a thing. If everything goes right. But I mean, I'm just trying to be positive. Because you already know, there's Raider Nation for life. There's nothing else besides that. With the addition of Marcus Peters, our defense is way better. With the veteran experience that he brings, it just makes us better at defense right there. That's all I got to say, Q. I'm trying to be optimistic. Football's right around the corner, and we got preseason in like 2 weeks. So, hey, F the whiners, go Raiders, and just win, baby.
Thank you so much for the call, my man. I do appreciate you. And yeah, Jimmy G passing his physical, big deal. You know, now I'm interested to see how much work he actually puts in training camp. Head coach Josh McDaniels on Tuesday said that there's no restrictions. They're not going to put him in there 100% of the time. They're going to obviously limit his reps, but he's cleared. He's good to go. He doesn't have a snap like limitation or anything. So again, he's pretty good to go. Excited about that. And when it comes to Marcus Peters, I agree. Bringing a vet presence in will help bring confidence and understanding of the game, the playmaking ability, a little bit of swagger that the Raiders defense need. All that is part of it. So Jimmy G, he's healthy, great. Start gelling with the team. That's exciting to see what this offense could look like. And Marcus Peters could be a potentially big addition to that Raiders defense if he can help kind of get that confidence and, like I said, that swagger into getting out there and doing what they need to do to help complement what the offense could look like. So, King Raider, thank you so much for that call. I do appreciate you. Got a text from Jersey Shore Raider. It says, hey, Q, Jersey Shore Raider here. How's it going? Was listening to the podcast the other day when you were talking about Hunter Renfrow possibly being released. I'm not sure I understand what the problem with him. I look at Hunter being a mirror image of Edelman and Welker. Only difference is they had TB12 thrown on the ball. I know he was injured last year, but I believe it was due to poor ball placement. Please correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's a lot of talent there, and I think it's time for McDaniels to get it out of him. Our offense can be crazy good. Thanks for all you do, Q. You and Raider Nation, enjoy the rest of summer. That's Jersey Shore Raider. Thanks for the text. And, yeah, I'm not saying that Hunter's going to get released. There was conversation about Hunter getting traded. I don't think he's going to get released at all. There was conversation about him potentially being traded after they brought in, Jacoby Myers. And then, of course, they went out and drafted Trey Tucker as well. And both those guys play the slot. Jacoby Myers, as a matter of fact, plays the slot really well. So it's like, wait, hold on. What's going on with Hunter Renfrow? So the rumors were out that he was going to get traded. I never said he was going to get released. I'm interested to see what he looks like at training camp because he didn't live up to the billing in year one, and he was a guy I was excited about because of the guys that you mentioned, Edelman, Welker, all those guys, right? The slot receiver in Josh McDaniels' offense has always done really well, so I thought Hunter Renfrow was going to be able to do that. But he wasn't available most of the season last year after getting a contract extension. So I know that didn't sit well with the team, with the front office and the head coach, that all of a sudden they give him a contract extension, he's not available. So the conversation was out there about him being traded, not him being released, right? That would be silly as far as the money's concerned to flat out release him. So this year, I do believe there's a place for Hunter Renfrow, Trey Tucker, Jacoby Myers, all to coexist. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to last, in the year after year after year, but at least for this year, I do believe unless some team comes away with some crazy offer for Hunter Renfrow, I definitely believe he'll be a part of the silver and black. Again, that's for this year. We can revisit this conversation next year. Then all bets are off. So again, it's one of those situations. I do believe they're going to try to get the most out of Hunter Renfrow that they can this year. So we will see. Up next, got a call from E. Rich in Rockland, California. He's calling to talk about running back Sincere McCormick and also has a question for Steven in Chicago. Here he is, E. Rich out of Rockland, California.
What up, Q? It's your boy E. Rich calling from Rockland, California. Hey, I got a two-part question for you here. First one, I wanted to bring up Sincere McCormick. He's a running back on the Raiders roster. I know last year, I don't remember exactly what they did with him, but they basically stashed him like they were saving him kind of for the future there. I don't remember exactly how they did it. Maybe you could provide clarity on that, but I was wondering if you've heard anything on that name. Maybe he's kind of a secret weapon we kind of have under the wings here, but if you haven't heard any recent news on him, can you keep an eye out for him in training camp and kind of see what the deal on him is? It seems like they stashed him for a reason, so I'm kind of curious to see why. And then my second part to my question here, I'm actually wanted to reach out really quickly to Steven in Chicago who called on Monday's show, or on Tuesday's show, that is. I'm actually going to the Chicago Bears game this year, so I'm hoping you could call back, maybe get some advice on where I should go, where I should kind of see, things I should see, maybe even some good tailgates at the Chicago game, just kind of reaching out. Thank you.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And yeah, way before camp, like in May, they put Sincere McCormick on IR, ending his season before it ever got started. He's currently on the roster, and I don't remember what and I say this in air quotes, injury was, but it did feel very Latavius Murray-like when they stashed him on IR. Obviously not this staff, but the staff that Latavius Murray was with, they put him on IR, and then the next season he ended up becoming the lead running back, and he was that guy for quite a while. So I do see similarities there. Sincere was a hell of a running back out of UTSA, right? I mean, he was a guy that I thought was a really good pickup for the Raiders, and then all of a sudden it's like he was there and then he wasn't there. So definitely someone to pay attention to in training camp, especially with Josh Jacobs not being there, right? I mean, you have Zamir White, you have Britton Brown, of course you got Amir Abdullah, you've got Brandon Bolden, you've got other guys there that are runners, but Sincere McCormick is a guy to pay attention to, so we'll definitely do that. And Steven, out of the shy, yeah, if you can help out E-Rich, go ahead, because I've only been to Chicago one time, and that was when they had the draft there, and I was really literally focused on nothing but the draft. I went to some sports bar because we did our radio show there. I'm trying to remember what it was called. It was downtown, like beers and suds. I don't know. It was some nice sports bar. And it was down there. As a matter of fact, if you've ever seen a Bar Rescue and that Underground Voodoo Lounge, it was kind of close to that place. And I was walking down the street and I saw it and I was like, oh, dang, that's the place that was on Bar Rescue. So, yeah, maybe you'll know where I'm talking about. But there was one sports bar that I went to and did my radio show from in Chicago when the draft was there. And that was about it. So I don't know anything else about Chicago. So, Steve, you're going to have to help E-Rich out. Let's get one more text before we close out the show. We'll take this one from Keegan in Vancouver, Washington. Say, what's up, Q? It's Keegan from Vancouver, Washington. It's fair to say nobody really knows what the Raiders are going to do with all these crowded position rooms. I'm starting to think it's more of a culture change thing. They're trying to let everyone know around the league that if you sign with the Raiders, you better be ready to get it done every single day. I know Raider Nation doesn't want to hear this, but do you think anyone walks into the Chiefs facilities for the first time thinking that they can slack? Absolutely not. Let me know what you think. Raiders. That's Keegan in Vancouver, Washington. And, yeah, you're definitely right about that. We hear that every time a new coach takes over any team, right? It doesn't matter if it's basketball, baseball, if it's football, whatever. It doesn't matter what sport, what level. Every single time there's a new coach in place, new manager in place, it's always we got to change the culture. We got to change the culture. Well, we've been hearing that with the Raiders for quite a while, and I do believe that these guys are trying to change the culture. They're trying to bring in the guys that don't mind working their tails off, guys that know what they expect. And that's the thing about it. And I can say this from personal experience. A lot of times people get mad and say, well, why do you have to have your guys in place? And I'll tell you, it's easier to get guys that know you and understand what you expect to go ahead and follow what you're doing than to try to convince someone who's been doing it their own way for a long time who will tell you, well, that's not how we do it around here. Well, if the way that you were doing it around here worked, then I wouldn't be here to begin with. So I totally understand that. Like that's every day. That's business. Right? You want guys that you could trust. You want guys that you could believe in. You want guys that share your common thoughts. And, I want a guy that's working with me that thinks like me. Oh, hey, what would Q do in this situation? Let me go out there and do this. Oh, okay. Hey, Q would do this. Let me go do this. Oh, yeah, this is what Q would want us to do. Like, without me having to say something. That's the same thing that this staff is trying to do. So, yeah, it is a culture change thing. There's no doubt about it. And hopefully that leads to a winning culture and not a losing culture. A winning culture is sustainable, and that's what the Raiders need, and that's what Raider Nation needs, is a winning culture that is very sustainable. So hopefully that's what they're building, and if they are, and it's trending in that direction, then I think that a lot of Raider Nation will be okay with, the extra time that it may take to get there. But again, the signs have got to be there. You've got to be able to see what's going on and understand, like, okay, it's going in the right direction. So thanks so much for that text. I do appreciate you. Coming up tomorrow, got a call from TK in Arizona, plus a text from Rhode Island Raider Rob, and more. We'll have more news and notes. Of course, it's the first day of practice. We'll talk to about 4 or 5 players following practice. It's from 8:30 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. Pacific time, and then the players will follow that. And so if there's anything good and some really good players, hopefully we get to talk to Marcus Peters, but who knows? I don't know what players we'll get to talk to yet, but when we find out, I'll try to bring it to the table, and we'll have plenty to talk about. But we're back. We are back, baby. It is training camp time. Buckle up. Get ready. It's full throttle. Stick your head in a tank of gasoline. Light it on fire. Let's go. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself. Take care of your family. Love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.